I get it. I am a prick. I'm challenging your whole dogma of, I did my research where you typed in how to become a trainer, clicked on the first. Howdy y'all, it's your favorite trainer with a belt buckle, helping you pass NASM. In 2025, we've helped over 5,000 people pass this. Listen to these words and I guarantee you'll pass. Howdy y'all, welcome back to the Show Up Fitness podcast. Today we're gonna go over the NASM 50 vocab terms that you absolutely need to know, and probably all you need to know to pass this exam. Super easy certification to pass when you focus on the main topics of human movement science, behavioral change, the assessment process, movement compensations, OPT model, training, energy, and nutrition systems, and then the key terms is we're going to highlight right now. Helped over 5,100 people pass this. And someone commented on our YouTube the other day, why would you want to take a shortcut? Because this information is outdated. Their periodization, the OPT model sucks. The fear-mongering behind upper cross, lower cross, and putting people into this dysfunctional pattern of movement makes them like a snowflake. It is not optimal. There's so much stuff in here that is wrong, but I taught this stuff for 10 years. I can get anyone to pass it. It's super easy. Now, if you want to become an elite trainer, you got to erase this shit from your mind and focus on the people skills that you don't learn in a textbook, the business skills, how to scale your business, and then also the fundamental movement patterns and programming. You don't learn that in this textbook. But if you don't believe me, go to Reddit. Type in is NASM, ACE, ISA. Are these legit certifications? And it sucks. It gets you in the door, which is very ironic to me because why would you want to get into the door just to gain experience without supervision? So you need to get a qualified certification, which is going to level you up. And that's what we teach at Show Up Fitness. Our certification allows for you to ask questions. You understand programming, you understand anatomy, and then we put you into a role play scenario for the test, which mimics job interviews out there. And that's why we've had the #1 trainer at Lifetime, the #1 trainer at Crunch, top 50 trainer at Equinox. They all have their Show Up Fitness CPT. We are recognized nationally, internationally, the fastest growing certification, but you don't give a rat's ass about that. You're losing your shit because you need to pass NASM. I got you. Let the belt buckle trainer help you. Focus on these words. Don't get lost in Quizlet and all this other bullshit. These 50 terms are going to help you. If you leave us a 5-star review for the podcast, I will send you over this sheet which has the definitions, beginning with #1, anatomical position. Skelly back here has his hands supinated. You're looking forward. That is the anatomical position. Sagittal is an imaginary line bisecting the body into right and left halves, allowing for flexion and extension. Whereas frontal is an imaginary line bisecting the body into anterior and posterior halves, allowing for AB and adduction. Transverse is an imaginary line bisecting the body into superior and inferior halves, allowing for rotation. So when they ask you a question about an exercise, you just need to look at the skeleton and see what is happening at the joints. It's going to say your client is performing a single leg scaption. What plane of motion are they in? You need to know that exercise for this test. And it's just lifting your arms forward. That's humeral flexion, which is the sagittal plane of motion exercise. The terminology about movement, such as ipsilateral, that's the same side of the body as seen when doing jumping jacks. Your arm and your leg are both abducting, whereas contralateral will be opposite, like a bird dog. My right arm is flexing, my left leg is extending. That's contralateral. Proprioceptive enriched environment. Anytime you see that, choose phase 1 of the OPT model. They love that fucking term. Proprioception just means body awareness. If you close your eyes, how do you know where your nose is? Why do you think cops are going to have you stand on one leg and touch your nose if they pull you over if you've been drinking? Because the frontal part of your brain, which deals with motor control, has been impaired due to alcohol, and you touch your forehead. And you go, oh shit, sorry officer, I've been drinking too much. Don't you dare get a DUI, that's stupid. So is this test, but you got to pass it, that's okay. Human movement system. You got to look at the three main components for NASM, which is going to be the skeletal, nervous system, muscular system. The basic unit for the skeletal system is the osteon. For the nervous system, it's the neuron, of which you need to know the cell body, dendrite, and axon, of which the cell body contains the nucleus. That's all you need to know from the physiology standpoint. They're not going to get into the complexities of human movement, the physiology aspect. That's all you need to know right there. And the basic unit for muscle is the sarcomere. Within the sarcomere, as you'll learn here in a second, we have the actin and myosin myofilaments. Mechanoreceptors, this is a great term to know. Joint receptors, GTO, as well as the muscle spindles. GTO is your Golgi tendon organ. So your Golgi tendon organ, associate that with foam rolling and autogenic inhibition. Muscle spindles, associate that with a static stretch. You always foam roll. And if you do not, you die and go to hell. You have to foam roll. Overactive muscles, scare your clients. And then you're going to stretch in phase 1, 20 to 40 seconds. And then for phase 2, 3, and 4, you're going to do active isolate stretching. In phase 5, we're going to do dynamic stretching. Always foam roll, stretch phase 1, active, and then dynamic in the other one. When you static stretch, you are having an impact on the muscle spindle. The appendicular and axial skeleton, as you see with Skelly over here, he's missing an arm, poor guy. But the axial is the skull and the vertebrae. 33 bones in the vertebral column, 7 in the cervical, 12 in the thoracic, 5 in the lumbar. If you're good at math, that is 24 bones, but we also have 9 fused together in the sacrum and the coccyx. Appendicular is everything that comes out, your humerus, femur, patella, and so forth. Wolff's Law deals with bone remodeling. You need to implement a vertical load on the bone for remodeling processes. Osteoclasts break down, osteoblasts build up the bone. A tendon connects muscle to bone, whereas a ligament connects bone to bone. The most common ligament in the body, ACL, anterior cruciate ligament. Cruciate in Latin means cross, whereas the Achilles tendon, you had Achilles' mom, she was a weirdo, she held him by his ankles into the river of Styx, which gave him immortality, except that the ankle, gastroc and soleus, which are muscles of the calf, go into that tendinous sheath into your calcaneal bone. The Achilles tendon is connecting muscle to bone. As I said earlier, sarcomere is the basic unit of muscle, where you have the actin and myosin myofilaments. Actin is the thin one, myosin is the thick one. The surrounding layers of muscle, you need to know epimysium is fascia around the entire muscle. Then you have the perimysium and then the endomysium. Think of endo as down deep, whereas epi is on top. This is fascia that surrounds the muscle fibers in the individual ones. Know the definition of a motor unit, a motor neuron, and all the associated muscle fibers that it innervates. I remember when I was at the University of Connecticut getting my internship, part of my degree in kinesiology, Dr. Kramer, one of the all-time greats when it comes to movement competency and programming and periodization. It's funny when I asked him who NASM was, I've never heard of them. A motor unit is a motor neuron and all the associated muscle fibers it innervates. I remember in class reviewing periodization, he said, never ever forget that term. It deals with Henneman's size principle. The irony again, not even in the NASM textbook, but that's how muscles are recruited. If they're type 1, which are slow twitch, or type 2, which are fast twitch. Think of a sprinter going as fast as they can. They're a little more jacked because type 2 muscle fibers are typically bigger, but they fatigue quickly. You cannot sprint a mile because those type 2 muscle fibers are going to fatigue very quickly, and then you're going to go into the slow twitch ones, which are type 1. Type 1 are going to typically be around the spine, stabilizing joints as seen with the rotator cuff muscles. It's a cuff, not a cup. So there's 4 of them. You don't need to know that anatomy for NASM, but at show up, you need to know it's the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, subscapularis. That anatomy is what levels you up, and that's why you're elite when you get your Show Up Fitness CPT. But you can't get a refund for NASM. You got that bundle of foam roller jammed in your ear here. That's okay. You need to pass this. Listen to the words and you will. Type 1 have a lot of mitochondria, a lot of capillary density. They are more aerobic, which means they prefer fats, whereas type 2, they're more anaerobic. They prefer carbs. Heart anatomy, we have our ventricles and our atriums. Ventricles are the pumping chambers to the body and or heart, whereas the atriums are the holding chambers. Blood is coming back to the heart via your right atrium from the body, the left atrium from the lungs. The pumping chambers, the ventricles on the left side are going to the body, ventricles on the right side are going to the lungs. The pulmonary artery is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. All arteries go away from the heart. All veins go back to the heart. The pulmonary vein is the only vein that is carrying oxygenated blood because it's going back to the heart, but from the lungs, the pulmonary. The pulmonary vein is dropping off good, rich blood into that left atrium. The SA node is the pacemaker of the heart. You need to know cardiac output, which is the rate times stroke volume. And stroke volume is the amount of blood pumped out of the heart with each contraction. Then we have the arterioles, which are going to go into your capillaries, into your venules. We have our catecholamines, which are our fight or flight hormones. We have epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, and then norepinephrine, which is referred to as noradrenaline. And you have the adrenal glands, which are producing these. Adrenal glands are on top of the kidneys. We have catabolic hormones, such as the catecholamines, as well as cortisol. And then we have the anabolic hormones, which are insulin, insulin growth-like factor, human growth hormone, as well as testosterone. Gluconeogenesis, break down the word gluco, making reference to glucose. Neo means new, and genesis is the generation. So you are generating new glucose from a non-carbohydrate substrate. You're breaking down your muscle. That's degrading your muscle, primarily your BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, which are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. That is what we are degrading when we are breaking down our muscle. Concentric and eccentric. For NASM, you got to know 4211. And if you actually look at the programming and you have common sense, you will see that their workouts are like 7 hours long because let's test your math capabilities here. 4 plus 2, 6, plus 1, 7, plus 1, 8. And you're doing 12 to 20 reps for stabilization. That means each exercise is literally 2 to 3 minutes long. That is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire career as a strength coach. But a strength coach didn't make the OPT model. It was a therapist. Nothing wrong with Dr. Clark, cool dude. But therapists are not great at programming for general population. That's what strength coaches are great at. That's what you should be great at as a trainer, not scaring your clients that they're dysfunctional or broken with upper cross syndrome. Holy fuck's sake. If you tell your client they have pronation distortion syndrome or upper cross syndrome, how do you think your sales are going to be? Maybe that's why we accept 25% sales rate, which is absolutely pathetic. I'm not calling you pathetic. I'm saying the process to become a trainer is pathetic. When you level yourself up and you don't scare your clients, I have numerous podcasts with physical therapists like the prehab guys where we are pro movement. You assess people based on their goals. You don't put their hands above their head and do some stupid ass movement screen that's irrelevant to what their goals are. That's scaring people. Your lats are overactive. They're thinking, what the fuck does that mean? I want to get jacked or I want my ass to be huge. And you just told me I'm dysfunctional. So at the end of that assessment, guess what they tell you? I'm going to go talk to my significant other. Back of their minds, I'm not going to fucking work with this dipshit. They don't know what the hell they're doing. You do not provide value to me. I'm going to find a trainer that looks the part, that talks the part, and knows the part. And that's why they head on over to Show Up Fitness, where the best trainers are. But let's get back to this. You need to pass that NASM, and your fight or flight hormones are through the roof. You're sweating. You have all these nerves and anxieties because this test, if you were to read it, 800 pages of bullshit, you are freaking out, rightfully so. Focus on these main topics. Concentric is the muscle shortens. Think about doing a bicep curl. Whereas eccentric, the muscle lengthens. We are stronger eccentrically. That's why if you cannot do a push-up, the best way to learn to do a push-up is not on your knees. It's to do an eccentric push-up. You go down as slow as you can to the ground. You cannot concentrically overcome gravity, but you can then go to your knees and worm yourself back up and then focus on the eccentric, but you cause a lot of damage, so don't do a ton of reps. Definitely don't fucking do 12 to 20 reps eccentrically. You'll give your clients rhabdomyolysis. Yeah, you can die from that. Don't get your clients rhabdo. 4-2-1-1 tempo, 4 seconds down eccentrically, you pause for 2. It's isometric, there's no change of length in the muscle. Press for 2 concentrically, and you hold for 1. The agonist during a push-up would be your chest. The synergist would be the helper at the elbow, which is your triceps. The antagonist is the opposite muscle. So if you're pushing, it would be your pulling muscle, which would be your lats. When you do a military press, which is in the frontal plane, you're pressing overhead, your deltoids would be the agonist. The triceps would be the synergist. The opposite exercise, a lat pull down or a pull-up, will be the antagonist. So it'll be your lats. Stabilizers are always the rotator cuff muscles for the upper body, and the lower body stabilizers will be your core, or NASM says your TVA, transverse abdominis. These are NASM terms for agonist, synergist, stabilizer, those muscles that I just said. When you actually learn movement, you'll see that there's other synergists because the scapula is working and or muscles at the ankle and knee, but they're just simplifying it. So memorize these things. Now, if you were to try to use this stuff on the SUF-CPT to become a qualified trainer, you would fail miserably. Because as we know, the hamstrings are in fact not a synergist when you are squatting because they're not engaged due to the knee extending and the hip. The muscle length of the hamstrings is not changing. Your adductors would be the synergist, but you got to put that NASM hat on and know the agonist at the knee for a squat are your quads, hamstrings will be the synergist, and the glutes are working at the hip. Stabilizers would be the TVA. When you're pulling, the agonist would be your back, biceps would be the synergist, stabilizers the rotator cuff, the opposite or antagonist would be your chest. A forced couple would be seen when you're doing an overhead press. The scapula is upwardly rotating. Probably one of the funniest things about the 7th edition textbook. They say there are only 4 actions of the scapula. There's actually 8. Why aren't we given the proper tools for trainers to be successful? I don't know. I didn't write that textbook. But upward rotation is going to be from the upper traps, lower traps, and the serratus anterior. They're working as a couple. So the force output is going to be from the upper trap, lower trap, as well as the serratus, upwardly rotating concentrically, and then they're going to eccentrically control downward rotation. We also have an anterior and posterior tilt of the scapula. Elevation and depression is seen in a shrug or when you're pushing your shoulder blades down with depression. And then we have protraction and retraction. Open versus closed kinetic chain. When you do a squat, your most distal region being your feet are on the ground. That is a closed kinetic chain exercise. Whereas a leg extension, the most distal part, your feet are going to be swinging and moving. They're not in contact with the ground, so that's an open kinetic chain exercise. Let's take a look at a bench press. Your hands are on the bar, the distal region is moving. That's going to be an open. Whereas a closed would be a push-up. Your hands are on the ground, they're not moving. Take a look at a lat pull down. The bar is moving, it's open. A pull-up would be closed. Another way to look at those variations would be which exercise is going to engage the core the most, a bench press or a push-up. Push-up would engage the core more, so it's closed. Altered reciprocal inhibition. They love these terms. Altered means it's dysfunctional. Again, you got to scare your clients. Reciprocal is the opposite. So 4/1, 1/4. It's the opposite. Inhibition. So that means the opposite muscle is not working the way it should. So I'm sitting down right now. I'm sitting on my, or what people like to say is, you have glute amnesia. No, you fucking don't, but that's a sexy term today. You have dead butt. No, your glutes work perfectly fine. But if you scare someone, now we're going to be cooking with gas. So my glutes, the reciprocal muscle of the action that I'm in, which will be flexion, hip flexion. The agonist for hip flexion would be your psoas major. The opposite or reciprocal muscle group is inhibited. That would be my glutes. The cure for everything in the world is strengthening your glutes. The irony behind that is your glutes are probably pretty strong. We can all get stronger, but we don't need to blame the psoas for everything. Just focus on total body workouts and movements, and you're going to be fine if you get in all planes of motion. I sure as hell don't tell my clients that you're going to be in pain because you're sitting. That is not the truth. That is so simplistic. And if it's too simple, it's probably not true. Pain is very, very complex. And that's why we have our soft tissue mobilization course, where you actually learn the fundamentals of pain, pain science, the biopsychosocial model of pain. And we help you network with physical therapists and dietitians for our nutrition certification. Because when you have a team, you will be successful. When a client comes into our gym here in Santa Monica or La Jolla, we tell them the expectations of what's going to happen during that assessment. Worst case scenario, something's off with you. I work with a physical therapist. We work with the prehab guys. We work with Dr. Chad Waterbury. We will refer you to them to get it checked out. But 99 out of 100 times, I'm able to work with you and help you. That's why you're coming to the best personal trainer. That's why we charge significantly more than quote unquote high-end trainers at Lifetime and Equinox, which are charging $150 to $200. Because if you want to get in the best shape of your life, if you want to become elite, you need to work with elite trainers, and that's exactly what we are at Show Up Fitness. We have autogenic inhibition. When you foam roll, remember, if you don't, you'll die, you are going to relax the Golgi tendon. The same muscle is being inhibited. So when you foam roll your gastrocnemius, based off the NASM vocabulary, which is overactive, autogenic inhibition is taking place. Synergistic dominance, let's go back to me sitting here. My glutes aren't working, they're off, they're dead, and my psoas is so overactive, so when I stand up, my glutes are off, my hamstrings are working synergistically. So the dominance of my hamstrings is why I'm dysfunctional, I'm going to die tomorrow. That's what you need to know for the exam. Relative flexibility is the body's way of taking the path of least resistance. So I'm going to lean forward, I'm going to throw my hips up because my glutes are dead, my hamstrings are working. That is why we're dysfunctional. And you're going to cure everything by doing a fucking stability ball squat curl press in phase 1 of the OPT model. I'm actually serious because that's what this thought process is going off of. For the stretch shortening cycle, we have eccentric followed by this very quick reactive amortization phase, then concentric. And that's why when we do a jump, we load back as quickly as we can, and that recoil is what allows for maximal force production. Think of pulling a rubber band back and then releasing it and see how far it goes. Whereas if you hold it for a long time, all that stored energy is going to dissipate. Number 26, macronutrients versus micronutrients. We have carbs, fats, protein, and alcohol. Those are the 4 macronutrients. They provide fuel. 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, 1 gram of protein, 4 calories, 1 gram of fat, 9 calories, 1 gram of alcohol, 7 calories. Micronutrients are smaller. Those are the vitamins and minerals. And then we also have water. You don't need to know too much with nutrition because they want you to go get their stupid nutrition cert, which you probably bundled up. It's a textbook. Another one. Woohoo! Put 15 certifications in your bio and you're going to look more qualified. But you're going to be taking a photo smiling thinking, what the fuck do I do next? Because reading an esoteric textbook without being able to ask questions does not set you up for success. Within bioenergetics, you have 3 parts. According to NASM, we have ATP, fast, explosive, 0 to 10 seconds. Phosphocreatine will be 10 seconds to 30 seconds. This is anaerobic metabolism. Glycolysis, you technically have fast and slow, but NASM just clumps them together, and we just have glycolysis, roughly 30 seconds to 3 minutes of work being done. Oxidation is going to be 3+ minutes. When it comes to bioenergetics, the most important things to look at, duration and intensity. So if something is fast and explosive, that's going to be type 2 recruitment. It's going to be creatine phosphate or ATP. They're pretty much used interchangeably. Glycolysis is going to be that middle range. So if you were to go run for a minute, that's going to be glycolysis. Oxidation would be running a mile or running 10 miles or doing a marathon. Typically, that's why marathon runners are smaller, is because it's more type 1 recruitment. Sprinters are more jacked because it's more type 2. Glucose is stored in muscle and liver as glycogen. Glycogen attracts water. It's referred to as hydrophilic. You will probably see a question asking, which of the following is the storage form of glucose? The answer would be glycogen. We can break down glycogen into glucose, allowing for work to be done. 1 glucose molecule is roughly 40 ATP. TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. This equation is your BMR, basal metabolic rate, your thermal effective food, which is roughly 10% for all macros, but protein is higher, not things that they're going to ask you about, all things that we will cover in our nutrition certification with the registered dietitian. And that is why you can make up to $30,000+ per year as a nutrition coach on top of your training. Why aren't trainers doing that? It's because you're not brought in with those realistic expectations. Do not, I repeat, do not include nutrition part of your personal training. It's like going to the dentist and wanting to look at your big fucking toe. No, you go to the expert for that. So thermal effect of food is roughly 10%, and that's the requirement of energy to break down your fuel. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And then basically we have our activity, and then we have our input, and that's what this is making reference to. Fiber, roughly 28 grams for females, 35 grams for males. Amenorrhea is the lack of menstruation due to either low body fat percentage and or high amounts of stress and lack of sleep. A means without. Meno is referencing menstruation. Rhea is discharge. So you lose your monthly discharge because your body fat percentage is too low and or sleep, stress, hormonal dysfunctions. Caffeine, just remember 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram. There could be a supplement question on there. Contraindication, that just means something you should not do. A client who has CAD, coronary artery disease, maybe they are a year post some type of heart attack. You probably don't want to be doing a lot of gripping exercises because that's going to drop blood pressure. So then when you release the weights, your blood pressure shoots up, you get dizzy, pass out, die. Don't want that. So a contraindication for someone who's recovering from a heart attack would be avoid gripping exercises. The doc may say, make sure to avoid the Valsalva maneuver, which is holding your breath. So contraindications are just something that you should not be doing. You should have a therapist on your team and a doctor and a dietitian to make those referrals. When in doubt, refer out. Waist to hip ratios, 0.8 for females, 0.95 for males, which is the equivalent of 40 inches for males and 35 inches for females. You would take that ratio of your waist to your hip and they give you that percentage. Durham-Wormsley, the 4 sites, bicep, tricep, suprailiac, and subscapularis. Those are the 4 sites that you need to know for body fat percentage. Females have essential body fat of 8 to 12%, whereas males have 3 to 5% essential. VT1, biliary threshold 1, equal carbs and fats for fuel. VT2, which is more anaerobic and more carbs. V1 and 2 are most appropriate for general population, whereas zones 3 through 5 more appropriate for athletes. So when you look at the OPT model, your strength and or power, phases 2 through 5, will be more 3 through 5 for the zones. So each part and phase of the OPT model, which we'll look at here in a second, is going to have specific recommendations for stretching, for balance, for core, for cardio. These are all things that you need to know. It's really not that hard. Just basically think of phase 1, what you're going to do with grandma. Phases 2, 3, and 4, most of us, when we go to the gym, that's what we're doing. And then your athletes will be phase 5. So beginner, intermediate, advanced. And then they'll have some certain exercise that you'll need to know. Kinetic chain checkpoints. According to NASM, there's 5. You have your ankle, knee, your lumbopelvic hip complex, your shoulder, and your head. But let's just use our noggin for a second. There's a lot more than 5. Ankle, knee, hip. Oh, we have 3 parts of the spine. Lumbar, thoracic, cervical. Oh, we have a shoulder, an elbow, and a wrist. And then we work on breathing. So there's actually 10. That's what we focus on with our warm-up at Show Up Fitness and the soft tissue mobilizations that the trainer can implement. I get it. You can't get a refund. You're stuck with this bullshit. Pass it. But don't do a bunch of correctives and foam rolling on your client. What is the value in yourself? Trainers with our certification can manually release certain areas, such as the infraspinatus if there's shoulder pain, the adductor magnus if there's knee pain, the peroneals if there's ankle or knee pain. You will understand pain and help your clients get out of pain during the assessment with these soft tissue mobilization techniques. And that is why the best gym in the world, Lifetime, has partnered with Show Up Fitness. The only company that can say in the entire world that you are guaranteed an interview with lifetime if you have your SUF-CPT. SUF-Fitness is the only company that can say that. If you pass your NASM and you reach out to me and say, hey, Chris, can I get hired at NASM? No, because you're going to be implementing this bullshit. I'm not going to give you our stamp of approval. Trainers that go through our program are elite and they become the best. 90% quit within the first year, and that's exactly what we're trying to change. I get it. I am a prick. I'm challenging your whole dogma of, I did my research where you typed in how to become a trainer, clicked on the first fucking link, because these giant corporations have millions of dollars to spend on ad spend they get in front of you, and it says on their website, gold standard, or some trainer at the gym told you, get your NASM, it's the most common. Flip the script. What if an alien were to come to Earth? I want some good, healthy food. Go to McDonald's. Just because it's the most popular doesn't mean it's the best. Do your research. Interview someone from NASM, ACE, ISSA. Go to Reddit. What are your thoughts on NASM? What are your thoughts on ACE? What are your thoughts on ISSA? What are your thoughts on SUF-Fitness? They're CPT. Never heard of it. Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean it's not legit. We are new. If you go back 100 years ago and you ask people on horses, what's the fastest car? What? What the fuck is a car? And you show them a brand new Ford one model, they'll be like, oh, that's not, no, horses are better. What? Just because that's what you've been doing doesn't mean that's what the future is going to be like. My goal is to help you pass this as quickly as you can. Put your fucking NASM hat, take the exam, and then you're going to have the natural ants, automatic negative thoughts. Holy shit, he was right. I'm not qualified. I got imposter syndrome. I have no idea how to assess clients in pain. So when someone comes up and they do have pain, you don't know what you're talking about. So that is going to ooze through your tone and your disposition, and they sniff it right out of you. So they don't sign up with you. So your confidence takes a nosedive. You need supervised experience. You need to go to a seminar. That's why we're teaching trainers at Lifetime and Equinox. We go to their gyms and help level them up to become elite. The elite gyms want the elite certification. If you want the simple certification, go to the shitty gyms, start there, don't get supervision, and guess what? You're just the past repeating itself. And that definition is batshit crazy. And guess who's batshit crazy? I am. I said it already. I know I'm annoying. Let's get back to this. I apologize. We need to know the energy cost of oxygen, which is referred to as a MET, M-E-T. And that's 3.5 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram per minute. Just flashcard that one. Over and active muscles. You have overactive and underactive muscles. Over are tight, over are shortened, under are weak, under are lengthened. So we just simplify everything by saying this is overactive and we need to foam roll and stretch it. And then we need to strengthen the weak one, which is the opposite. And then you cured everything. We're good to go. No, that's not how it works, but that's what you need to know for this. The most common overactive muscles, upper traps, latissimus dorsi, vastus lateralis at the knee, which is the knee extensor. It's a quad muscle. Your gastrocnemius, those are the main ones that you need to know. Pectoralis major as well. Underactive ones, your core, your glutes, anterior tibialis, your mid-back, deep cervical flexors. We're going to strengthen those via isolation with a 4-2-1-1 tempo. So they're going to tell you, your client is doing overhead squat assessment. Their arms fall forward. Who gives a flying fuck? But that's what you need to know. So the lats are overactive. You're going to foam roll them. You're going to static stretch them. You're going to strengthen the mid-back because that's underactive with a 4-2-1-1 tempo. Do some band pull-aparts, and then you get into the workout. Vertical loading is just a big-ass circuit, whereas horizontal loading is what you're going to be using in phases 2, 3, and 4, which is more straight sets. Bracing is going to be more for the rectus abdominis and the obliques, whereas drawing in is the TVA, transverse abdominis. That's a technique for the core aspect. Backside mechanics, triple extension. The hip is extending, the knee is extending, and then we have plantar flexion, which is also extension. Front side mechanics is triple flexion. The hip, think of a sprinter or a runner. Contralaterally, my left arm would be going forward, my right leg would be flexed, my knee would be flexed, and then I have dorsiflexion at the ankle. Power is defined by force times velocity and or work over time. Periodization, we have macro, which is the big picture. Meso is the month. Micro machines are small. That's going to be the week. We have linear, we have undulating. They're only going to ask you about what is the big picture for periodization. Macro. What does the weekly workout look like for your athlete? It's going to be the micro. BMI, body mass index, where obesity is going to be 30 plus. 25 to 29.9 is overweight. Normal is 18.5 to 24.9. Osteoporosis is you have holes in your bones due to lack of loading on your tissue, and or as we age and we go through menopause, we don't produce as much estrogen, so we leach calcium from the bones. Osteoporosis, if we were to compare them, think of it like as obesity, whereas it's the worst. Whereas osteopenia is like overweight. It's not as bad as obesity or osteoporosis, but it's the next step. Normal bone mineral density can be, osteoporosis can be reversed within 6 months of strength training regularly. We have LDLs and HDLs. This is making reference to hyperlipidemia. Think of the LDLs as lousy. We want those to be low density lipoproteins. HDLs are the healthy particles. These are the larger ones. High density lipoproteins. That's all you really need to know for this exam. Hypertension is a systolic blood pressure of 140 and or a diastolic blood pressure of 90. The average resting heart rate for your clients will be 70 to 80. Hypertension would be 140 over 90. That's bad. The systolic is how hard your heart contracts. The diastolic is how hard your heart relaxes. I love implementing blood pressure. It separates you from the majority of trainers out there. They don't feel competent doing this. You take your client's blood pressure. If it's 140 over 90, you're going to have to send them out, get medical release. Maybe there's going to be some contraindications from the doctor. But now it's an opportunity for you as the qualified trainer to reach out to that doc, take them to lunch, dinner, network with them, build your team. Diabetes, there's 3 types. Type 1, which is onset, genetic, usually less than age 10. You need to take a shot of insulin. Type 2, self-induced. We're eating too much, not moving enough, lack of sleep, and we're very stressed out. It's a combination of all of those things. It is reversible, whereas type 1 is not. And then we also have diabetes during pregnancy if we put on too much weight. They're not going to ask you about that, though. The Karvanen method, 220 minus your age, and then you're going to subtract resting heart rate, times it by the intensity, and then you add back in the resting heart rate. You will probably see the Tanaka formula, which is 208 minus the percentage, 0.7 times the age. Bulimia versus anorexia. Bulimia is going to be binging and purging, so you will be throwing up, whereas anorexia is body dysmorphia. Both of these are psychological issues that need to be addressed with the respected professional. You will probably see a test question around those. And last but not least, we have the rep ranges. This is the 50th part of this podcast and or YouTube. You put up with me this long, buckle down, we're almost there. You need to know the rep ranges, the rest interval, intensities, and the tempos for each of the phases of the OPT model. 12 to 20 for stabilization with a 0 to 90 second rest period, 50 to 70% intensity, 4-2-1-1. For hypertrophy, which is phase 3, you're going to be doing 6 to 12 reps, 0 to 60 seconds rest, 75 to 85% intensity with a 2-0-2-0 tempo. Phases 2, which is a superset, you're going to go heavier into unstable, such as a bench press into a push-up or a pull-up into a TRX row. For phase 5, we also have supersets, but it's going to be explosive into heavy and or heavy into explosive. You do a 3-rep max pull-up with some weight dangling between your legs, followed by some med ball throws. Or you do a med ball throw or slam, and then you go into the pull-up. You do a jump, followed by a back squat heavy. So strength is 1 to 5 reps, 2 to 5 minutes rest, 85 to 100% with an XXX tempo. Do not type that in the Google machine. You will get in trouble by your significant other. These are the phases that you need to know. I have podcasts, I have YouTubes breaking down why this is not optimal, but you need to know everything OPT model for the NASM exam, IFT for ACE. We teach you movement competency and how to implement the CCA plug and play, which makes your life so much easier. I want to end with a quick little example of the power of what happens when you go through Show Up Fitness. We had a hunk come to our Phoenix seminar lifetime. He learned from us the soft tissue mobilizations, optimizing programming, surrounded himself with lifetime trainers. He went to Lifetime. I connected him with a rep, brought him in for the interview process. There was 8 people there. He was the only one who was dressed up. When the manager gave them a case example for programming, it took everyone 30 minutes to design a program. It took Josh less than 3 minutes. The manager said, "What the hell did you just do? I've never seen an applicant fill out a program this fast." He explained it to him using the CCA, 10 checkpoints of human movement, how to get involved during the accessory with trainer engagement. He was hired on the spot. The other 7 were not hired. So typically what you're going to find, they're going to go to a lower end gym, LA Fitness, YMCA. Those gyms love the NASM certs because you're a cog in their system now and they can just turn and burn you. Maybe you do make it through a year and you have that experience, and then you go and try to get hired at a Lifetime or an Equinox, the best gyms. So what we're finding at Show Up is we're expediting the process. Not only are you getting hired at the best gyms, but you're becoming a top trainer. You're making the most money, but most importantly, you are turning your passion for fitness into a career. You're not working crazy 1,000-hour months. You are working a respectable amount, making a respectable income. You can easily make $120,000 per year. And those are things that we teach you at Show Up. 60% should come from stream 1, 30% stream 2, 10% stream 3. We just had a trainer open up a gym within 3 years. You don't hear about these successes. We are changing the landscape, and that is my mission. That is my drive. I'm sorry if I offended you, got your panties and jockstrap into a bundle. We are so sensitive today, but I'm pissed off because so many people have a fire for wanting to help people, but the entry standards are not setting you up for success. Think about it for a fucking second. I cuss a lot, I know. My dad was in the military, I got 3 older brothers. My mom was the angel, I'm the devil, I got it. But think about it. You're learning from a textbook in which our career, our trade is hands-on. You need to get into an environment where you're learning hands-on. And that's what we're doing at Show Up Fitness. We have weekend seminars. We have specialization certifications, our soft tissue. It's the best out there. You put it up against a corrective exercise cert, absolutely blows it away. Our nutrition cert, it's the best out there because you get to learn from a dietitian and implement what's called the body mass equation. This is going to help you drive streams of revenue so you can also make money from nutrition. Let me know questions, concerns that you have. I regularly bring people on the podcast to help quiz you to pass your textbook exam. Get into our certification. You will become a qualified personal trainer, and the Show Up Fitness CPT is recognized nationally, internationally as we continue to grow. We are the fastest growing certification in the world. We're excited to get into the UK, excited to grow in Latin America as well as India. We are changing the landscape, and I'm super proud of what we're delivering. It's all thanks to you for sharing, spreading the word, letting trainers know you can get certified and become qualified with the best certification out there. Have a great day, y'all, and keep showing up.